And I live in Italy. Berlusconi, the bastard, excuse me, Berlusconi was elected by the precariat of Italy. And he's just won again, damn him. And he's got the precariat basically going for him. And the reason is, of course, that the precariat is the new dangerous class. It doesn't have a politics of paradise that's presented to it or by it. So it's not a class for itself yet. But at the same time, it can be lured by populist fears and the demagoguery. And you've seen the far right and the Tea Party as your equivalent, even though it strikes us as absolutely mad. But so are many of those same groups. We have in Britain, we have the BNP. In Italy, they've got a government now in all parts. I was speaking in Finland recently. They were telling me about the True Finns, which is a similar sort of group of far right. Now, it's a very extraordinary phenomenon, the precariat. And China, again, is playing an interesting role in the emergence of the global precariat. Because China, quietly, has become a labor export regime. Hundreds of thousands of Chinese laborers are being sent abroad in various places for short-term projects and are contributing to the precarization of local labor markets. And I wrote a little poem which was spotted on the door of a dormitory of Chinese laborers in Vietnam. It said, "We are all people floating around in the world. We meet each other, but we never really get to know each other." And that's sort of symptomatic of this existence. I'll give one other example and then move quickly on because I've got to get to the end. Prato. Near where I live is the ancient textile and garment city of Prato. 20 years ago, everybody in Prato was an Italian, right? In the last 20 years, illegal Chinese migrants have gone into Prato and have become the main labor force in Prato. So 1/3 of the population of Prato today is Chinese. This is in central Italy. And when the crunch came, the financial crisis came, suddenly there was a collapse of the industry. And suddenly, instead of welcomed these Chinese laborers, which the Italians had welcomed them, they were suddenly demonized. Now, Prato traditionally has had a left-wing government going back generations, always been a left center. Today, it has a neo-fascist mayor and a neo-fascist local government. And they are raiding the Chinese compounds and so on. So you see that the precariat is an emerging phenomenon of global significance. The fourth theme, which I'm going to strip through dramatically quickly, so you'll please accept my apologies, is tertiarization. It's very interesting that we have a model of industrial time. We still think in blocks. You go to school, you go to work, you retire. You have 8-hour days. Our working time statistics are a joke in a tertiary society. A tertiary time concept we have yet to develop. But we're more and more doing work for labor or work for other purposes and various other activities that are not counted as labor but are either necessary if we want to perform labor or desirable if you want to succeed in the labor market. Now, tertiary time means that we're all suffering from a frenzy of demands on our time, pressure, people are under stress, and there's a chapter called The Horror, which goes through all the development of stress, playing on Conrad, obviously. But it is a global phenomenon where I've just come from Japan, where karoshi is the ultimate of this crisis. And interestingly, with the tertiarization process, you have not only a breakdown of concepts of time, but breakdown of concepts of workplace. So all forms of labor law look rather strange in a tertiary society. And I think it's interesting that as in the previous transformation, You have new forms of occupation that are developing, which are helping in the adjustment process and helping in the commodification process. And very interestingly, the latest occupation to be commodified is management. More and more managers are actually being subject to be commodified. There's a wonderful concept of interim managers, which is a major growth area, where these managers are sent out on projects, and if they fail, they're sacked immediately, and so on. So you're seeing a class fragmentation within occupations, including management. Now the fifth theme, this is my ghost. And I think we should all, not you, we should all be extremely worried about this ghost. The ghost is Jeremy Bentham. And Jeremy Bentham, of course, wrote the wonderful papers, Panopticon papers, and his Panopticon concept was used by Michel Foucault, and we all know about that, and the guard, and the unseen guard, and so on. And we've seen the growth of the surveillance state, and all the data surveillance, and I was reading this morning about the Amtrak thing. There was a bizarre experience about the guards and the engineers and so on. Now, Bentham, in his Panopticon papers, used the language, the term, an architecture of choice. And the whole idea of the guard, the central guard in the Panopticon, is to make people who are in the cells think they were being watched, so that they act as if they are being watched, so that they feel they've got a choice, but they haven't got a choice. Now, the extraordinary thing, and that this system of Panopticon is most well developed in the Chinese city of Shenzhen, where I've been, where they have millions of CCTV cameras and all sorts of complex data banks, and all developed by the US military. It's really a remarkable thing. But I want to warn you just before we get smug on it, that I'm sure most of us in this room supported and still support, I dare say, Barack Obama in becoming president. But his two key advisors wrote a book called Nudge, which I analyzed here, and they proposed libertarian paternalism, and behind that, the new behavioral economics. Now, the extraordinary thing about Nudge, if you read it, and it kept my bath warm for a few nights as I sat reading it in the bath, was that they use Bentham's language. They actually use architecture of choice, but never mention Bentham. Not once in the book is Jeremy Bentham thing. Now, essentially, this libertarian paternalism, and Cass Sunstein is now in the White House as the chief regulator in the United States, is about social engineering. It's about steering people to make the right choice. It's a very dangerous trend, I believe, personally. Sorry, Chris, but I'm proving once again strong views. But I'm joking. But the essence of the libertarian paternalism is being extended through corporate paternalism, various other forms of paternalism, into this corporate social responsibility movement and things. You can see it as a rather ominous trend. Now, finally, the book has two long chapters on what would be a new progressive agenda. And I think it's very important for all of us who, I would put us sort of left of center, should we say that, who are looking for an alternative progressive agenda, to step back and say laborism is not worth fighting to restore. I listened to Tom Cochrane at the conference that Chris mentioned a couple of weeks ago, and he was basically all talking back about putting back some sort of atavistic golden age model. I really sincerely believe that is not a good way to go. I think a good way to go is to look again at what we mean by freedom, what we mean by equality, and Carol here has done interesting work on this area, and to rethink our ideas on freedom and equality. And in that regard, I think we'll gain a lot if we go back again to Hannah Arendt and recall that all the great thinkers in her tradition have had an idea of associational freedom, not just liberal freedom